What is going on, everyone? This video is a technical walkthrough on how to rename columns in a dynamic frame in AWS Glue. I'll be covering how to rename a single column in a dynamic frame, as well as how to rename multiple columns at the same time. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so I'm in my Jupyter notebook here that is using interactive glue sessions. I've went ahead to import my base libraries that I need. So before we can rename our columns in our dynamic frame, we need to bring it in. So my data is coming from CSV files in S3. So we just went ahead to bring in our data. And if we take a look at our data that we're going to be renaming the columns of, we can see that we have 4 columns. We got an order ID, customer ID, total amount, and order date. So we're going to rename the total amount column to be purchase amount. All right, so we're going to create a new variable called dyf rename column. This is going to be the new dynamic frame that is created from the function we're going to run. And now we're going to use the dynamic frame that we brought in from S3. And to remap a single field, we're going to use the method rename field. We could have also used the rename class to achieve the same result, but recently these transforms were added to the dynamic frame class, and in my opinion, it makes it easier to work with because it feels more familiar as working with a pandas or Spark data frame. All right, so for the first variable, we're going to be passing in the column we want to rename. So it's going to be old name, and we're going to make that equal to total amount, which is the current name of the column. And next, we're going to pass in the new name, so new name. And this is going to be the new name that we're remapping it to. So it's going to be purchase total. And those are the only parameters we need to pass for this to work. However, I like to pass a transformation name so we can keep track of the state of this if we want to use bookmarking. So I'm going to pass in transformation underscore CTX and make that equal to rename one column. All right, so next, let's just print this to our Jupyter notebook so we can see what the results are. So I'm going to pass in the name dot to df and pass in the show method. Let's just show the first 5 rows. Just give that a run. All right, so now we can see that the total amount has been renamed to be purchase total. Great, so this worked. All right, so now let's talk about how to rename multiple columns in a dynamic frame. So unfortunately, we can't use that same method. We have to use a different method called apply underscore mapping. We could also use the apply mapping class from the transform library to achieve the same result. However, AWS added a new recommendation on this page where it now says to use the apply underscore mapping method instead of apply mapping class. So let's go ahead and use that instead. All right, so renaming multiple columns is a little bit different than the first method that we used. So first we need to create a list of all the columns we want to keep in our new dynamic frame. So we're going to call it mapping, and we're going to create a new list. Now we're going to pass in a tuple for every single column. So for our first tuple, we're going to pass in the order ID. So you can see in this tuple, we're going to be renaming the order ID to be in just ID now. And now for our second column, we're going to keep customer underscore ID the same. Next, we're going to pass in the second column we want to transform. So now total amount is going to be total purchase amount. And then we're going to pass in our last column, and nothing's happening with this column, so it stays the same. All right, so now let's create a new variable called dynamic rename underscore m underscore column. So this is going to be the new dynamic frame as a result of our mapping. We're then going to bring in our dynamic frame we originally created, which is dyf underscore customer. We're then going to use the apply underscore mapping method. And the first parameter we pass in is going to be that mapping list that we created earlier. And this is the only required parameter that we need to pass. However, I'm going to also pass in a transformation name. Let's just close off that bracket and we should be good to run this. So let's also just print the results of this. So we're going to convert it to a Spark data frame and just use a show method again. And let's just give that a run to make sure it worked. Great. So now we're getting results. And as you can see here, we now have the ID column. So if we look above at the first dynamic frame that we have, it was order ID. That was changed to ID. Customer ID stayed the same. Total amount changed to total purchase amount, and order date stayed the same. So there you go, we've successfully converted a single column in our dynamic frame, as well as walk through how to change multiple columns at the same time. So I hope this video was helpful and is now clear on how to rename columns in AWS Glue with PySpark. Thanks so much for watching, and if you thought this tutorial was helpful, please hit that like button. If you're interested in more videos on data engineering on AWS, please consider subscribing if you're new to my channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.